Welcome once again to Book Talking, an ongoing series of varying frequency in which I, Kobo and Conversation producer Nathan Maharaj, speak with my co-host Michael Tamblin about things going on in the world of books. In this episode, we're talking about authors versus Anthropic AI and Apple a little bit, US indie booksellers getting into and out of trouble, some big personnel moves at some big publishing houses, and the present and future of NaNoWriMo. Michael, start us off. What's going on with Anthropic AI?
Okay, so if you're interested in AI at all, you've been following this fairly closely. If you're not interested in AI, but you are an author or you're in a creative field, then this is also really important to you. It's probably the biggest news in books right now. So going back in time, um, most of the big AI models, the big like the large language models, LLMs, have been trained on books that really came from giant pirate repositories. You've got some developers, they're looking for content to train their AI model on, and there's a giant archive that really contains all the books that you can find online. And
All the
so
books is what they were looking for.
all the books is what they're looking for. You're trying to make a machine that encapsulates the sum total of human knowledge, and there are all the books sitting right there. Now, they're not sitting there in any kind of legitimate way. They're sitting in a zip file on a server somewhere that says all the books free pirated or something like that. These so there have been a couple of databases that that contained all the books, and over time, allegedly, all of the LLMs have ingested those data sets for training purposes. And so, as one might predict, a series of lawsuits have been working their way through the courts against OpenAI, against Meta, against Anthropic, all with subtle variations of, quote, you stole all of our stuff and used it to make your giant AI model, unquote.
Yeah.
And and the LLMs have all responded with variations of, a couple of things. One is like, we don't think it's stealing. We
Mhm.
think it's reading. It's just that the robot is reading it instead of a person. And, they just happen to never forget something once they read it. And the other defense has been around fair use. Copyright has all kinds of interesting concepts around this concept of fair use, which is a part of copyright that, say, lets you summarize a book in a book report or share an excerpt in an academic paper that isn't too
Mhm.
long or review the contents of a book and share some of the facts. And so most AI companies have said training an AI model should be fair use. And most publishers and authors say something like, we think that's something that you should ask permission for and you should pay for. And so the Anthropic case is one of these cases. And this one has finally settled.
Okay, so what is the decision? Are authors getting paid?
So it's kind of cool because the Anthropic case had a couple of wrinkles to it. They they've always sort of styled themselves as the, somewhat more regulated, somewhat more, good habits versus bad habits AI model. And they thought this looks like this could be a problem for us, this whole like stealing all of the books in the world, allegedly. So, how do we insulate ourselves? And they did a very interesting thing, which was they hired a guy named Tom Turvey. And Tom Turvey was previously the head of books for Google. And so he was the person heading up books for Google when Google went through the Google Books scanning lawsuit that had Google trying to scan all of the books in the world and put them into a database. And if anyone knows how to navigate the horrible collision of authors and publishers and tech companies in the courts, it's Tom.
This is the guy.
This is the guy. He's a lovely guy. I think he must be like 50% asbestos. He has like walked through so many
It's
fires.
true.
And and so he kind of bought Anthropic a piece of insulation, which was he said, you know what we're going to do? We're going to go and buy the books in print. And so they bought a lot of used books and they scanned them and then they shredded them. So in theory, there is still only one copy, which is the copy that has been scanned. And the law is much more favorable for books on paper for doing stuff like this than it is for ebooks, because ebooks you also have terms of use, like licensing agreements that you get into, and you
Yeah.
have DRM that has to be circumvented.
It's much
Uh,
more like software.
yeah, whereas books have all kinds of law around what you can and can't do with them, which is why you can sell a used book and all those kinds of things.
Yeah.
But so this was to build a bit of, hey, we're doing it the right way. But because they still used the pirated files first, they were on the hook for the piracy. So this whole case has been not about whether you could train using books, but whether you could pirate the books you were using for training. And everybody got involved in this. The Authors Guild is in there, the Association of American Publishers, Novelists Incorporated, Romance Writers of America, like everybody's in there. And so what it came down to was a $1.5 billion settlement. And they agreed on the number. They got everybody around a table and they hammered out that that was the amount that Anthropic was going to pay. And now it has to be paid out.
How are they going to figure out who gets paid? It's all the books. How
It's
do you
well,
split one and a half
it
billion might not be enough money for all the books.
so one of the reasons that they likely agreed to 1.5 billion was that's way less than what it would have been if each individual book was filed as an act of piracy. You're looking, at tens of thousands of dollars at least for each book that had been pirated. So this takes that number down. And then what takes it down again is about 40% of the files that Anthropic downloaded. And they downloaded about 7 million books. About 3 million were duplicates. You know,
Gulping out of the pirate bay, you get a little
yeah,
bit of, yeah.
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 Of the remaining 4 million, approximately 2.5 million were written in languages other than English, and most of those weren't registered for copyright in the US. So they're all out of the deal. That leaves about 1.5 million unique English language works, but they also had to be registered with the US Copyright Office. And so you have all of these authors finding out that usually that's the job of the publisher, that
Yeah.
their publisher didn't do their homework and register their books. So
Uh-oh.
about 1 million books get knocked out of the settlement because they can't substantiate that the copyright had been filed. So that's left 500,000 books. 500,000 books, $1.5 billion, people are getting about $3,000 a book. And then that has to be split between the author and the publisher because, they both make money when a book is published. So it's for most books a 50-50 split. And for some, it's different because like academic books are different, things like that. Um, so in the end, it's not going to be a lot of money, but you do have some authors who have
Mm.
a lot of books in there. So there's now like forms and a sign up website that you have to go to, and like all of these things you have to do to substantiate your claim, at which point you will get a slice of this 1.5 billion. And what makes it important is both that it is now said that the piracy part was wrong, and you shouldn't pirate books in order to train your language robot, and it's kind of set a price
Mhm.
with the first of these models. So is it likely that we're going to get a bunch more of these lawsuits now kind of walking from AI company to AI company? Yeah, probably. Like
Yeah.
I think you get a lot more of these.
Yeah. So to be clear, the payout is it damages or is it like a late licensing fee? How are we to think about that money?
It's a good question because what I haven't dug into yet is, does that mean it's okay to keep the book in there?
This is
And
the thing is
yeah,
like are you yeah, are you going to
and
just go ahead? Did we just tell all the other guys $1.5 billion? That's all you need. Away you go.
and if you're Anthropic or if you're OpenAI, that's not a lot of money. Like
No, no. Yeah.
that's kind of the crazy part is with the amount of money that these companies are raising, 1.5 to make this go away feels like a not bad thing. But what's important was it wasn't the judge wasn't saying you can't change train on books. It was saying you can't pirate when you train. And so the training ostensibly is still legal. The how you did it was bad. So I think it's that they are paying for having done it the bad way, but that doesn't necessarily mean they have to yank the books out.
Mm.
Now, it's also possible like the authors can opt out of it. They can pursue their own claims. So this is like far from over. But this is the first one of these cases that's gone into settlement mode and actually set a benchmark for what authors get paid, which is, when you think about it, not a lot of money to have your book, taken to an LLM. So much more on this to come for sure.
Wow. Okay. So we also know that Apple has been doing a little bit of AI training, and authors are also unhappy there. Who's mad? Why? What did Apple do?
Yeah, we found out back in September that authors have now filed another class action lawsuit in California, again for the same thing, essentially for using this pirated data set to train their language models, and that rather than licensing them or even doing what Anthropic did of like going and scanning books and then shredding them, they just went to the pirate sites and pulled the books down and then trained on them. And it's interesting because like Apple doesn't have the same kind of profile from an AI company perspective that some of the other like Anthropic or OpenAI do. Uh, but everyone who's building a model kind of ends up in the same boat of looking for big data sets that they can use to train on.
Hmm.
The what we read in, and I think this came from Publishers Lunch, um, Michael Cater was reporting on, was that Apple has a history of licensing for IP to train its Gen AI tools. So they did a deal with Shutterstock to
Uh-huh.
train tools to do AI on photographs. Um, but they haven't done what with authors. So it's not like they believe that this is a free and open market where we can grab whatever IP we want to train on. There were some that they paid for, but this one they haven't. And so that's going to form like part of the hinge for this. And it's just like one of many cases going on. New York Times, is both suing AI, but is also licensing data to Amazon of all people. Um, and you can imagine that all of this is, legal chess, where on one hand, you're trying to set a price for the things that you own as intellectual property. And on the other hand, you're going after the people that have vacuumed it up for free. And so the you're trying to make money off of it on one side and you're trying to recover either control or assets or money on the other. It's going to be like this. Lawyers are going to be getting rich on this for the next decade, you can be sure.
And they're high profile. They're like their authors' names on this. What am I seeing? Grady Hendrix
Yeah,
is leading this
Grady
suit.
Hendrix and Jennifer Robertson were the two for the Apple class action lawsuit. The one that was against Meta had everyone in it. It was like Michael Chabon and uh, Sarah Silverman. Like
Yeah,
it
yeah.
was like a who's who of authors. Um, and it's been kind of a feature of this where the authors have gotten together, they've formed these class action lawsuits, and in some cases, the judges have kind of come back to them and said, I get where you're going with this, but the more you would maybe have had more traction if you'd gone after it in this direction. So where
Mhm.
if a publisher had led it, they might have had frankly, either better lawyers or better legal strategy.
Yeah.
But as it's been authors going in collectively and trying to direct this, with a law firm behind them, it's in some cases you've had the cases coming out that have sort of been half wins, half losses, and in some cases with the judges saying, "Hey, you should really maybe take another run at this," because there's definitely interesting law in here that maybe you
Love
haven't
the
explored as
energy.
well. Yep, so happy for the commitment, and now but better luck next time. So some of these may come back again too.
And I think we've got one more AI item to talk about, and this is an unexpected angle. Um, Powell's, the beloved bookseller of the Northwest, they got in trouble for using some AI. What did Powell's do?
I th- this is, I think, going to be like a textbook example of the kinds of challenges that businesses are going to run into with AI. Essentially, someone um, used AI imagery to make T-shirts and mugs at Powell's. The most innocuous activity you can possibly imagine, and the staff got all exercised about it, and this is creative people having their livelihoods affected. Why are we using these AI images when we could be employing real artists and real illustrators? And so that went out online, and people are piling onto Powell's as being bad for robbing artists of their livelihood. And so as Powell's digs into this, it turns out that a freelance artist that they had hired to do their merch was using Adobe tools, which now include some AI assisted features. And as a part of that, created AI images that then got used in the t-shirts and the mugs.
Plot twist.
So it's two interesting problems. One is that AI is now in all kinds of tools. Um, and it was interesting that Adobe tools were being used because Adobe actually does license all of the images that they use to train their AI. So they've made a
Hmm.
brand attribute out of being out of essentially trying to create, quote unquote, ethically sourced AI.
Yeah.
But how do you keep AI out when every tool you use, whether it's Microsoft Word or Figma or Adobe Photoshop, is trying to jam AI in? Um, which leads to the other problem, which is people in the creative and creative adjacent fields, if they see AI, now get really emotional. If they see AI, they assume that someone's been getting ripped off
Yeah.
and that an illustrator is losing their job or an artist is losing their job. Um, and so the backlash comes whether you've used Adobe, who does license all of their stuff, or not. Uh, and to the point where you had the Nick Clegg, the former head of government affairs for Meta, quoted as saying, if the AI industry has to ask artists for permission, it's going to destroy the AI industry. So the implication being we are vacuuming up so much of this stuff to put it into our
Yeah.
machines that like we can't start asking for it now. So is this going to lead to more of a backlash or make it less likely that AI imagery can be used for anything other than like memes and on social? Um, because so many of the people who care about art, care about illustration, see something that looks like it's been generated by AI and are just naturally repulsed by it.
Yeah.
That seems to be kind of what we're seeing, are these dividing lines being formed.
Yeah, it's an aesthetic it's an aesthetic, it's become an aesthetic problem of like I, I mean, we can count down, I guess, to an artist who specializes in oil paintings that appear to be AI generated. Like that is the skill that it's oil on canvas, it looks like AI.
Yep. Or what I was thinking about last night, which is um people starting to morph their writing style on email to be so idiosyncratic that it clearly couldn't have come from an AI. Like you just like the more deranged you sound, the more people are like, oh, he actually took the time to write it. That's so nice. He didn't just, hit the autocomplete button. Or you get to a place where the tools advance to the point that you've crossed the uncanny valley that we're in right now
Yeah.
to the point that it can't be detected. And
Yeah.
then you're on the other side of this hurdle and you know, in a in a more interesting, and if you're on the other side of this argument, more troubling place of we can't even tell now what's been generated by a person and what hasn't. We're not
Yeah.
there yet, but you can see how you'd get there.
Yeah. I mean, this illustration, I mean, it's not great. The books, it's a wolf on top of a stack of books, and it's not great. It's not.
It is maybe not something you would want to hang your brand on, but I'm sure at the time it was like a store manager going, "Hey, we could use some new mugs, and we haven't had mugs in a while." And like, I'm gonna call somebody who I know does illustration, and they can knock something out for us, never thinking that they were just going to jam their hand into a hornet's nest of, the nature of, of creative work and the livelihood of the artist. But that's kind of where you end up now
Yeah,
anytime you engage with this topic, because it, like so many other things in our lives, have become increasingly polarized.
yeah. I think someone just called their nephew. That's my
Yeah,
that's my take here. Looks like local artist was someone's nephew.
got it.
Um, and I hope they learned their lesson.
I'm sure they did.
So Penguin Random House, they reported some troubling earnings, and they cited quote unquote rising costs. What do you make of what's going on with the Bertelsmann family?
So Penguin Random House, biggest of the Western publishers, did its Q1, Q2 earnings for 2025, and they and the results weren't awesome. Yeah, their overall profitability was down 12%. Um, and they say due to rising costs, and I think it's a bunch of things. There were certainly lower revenues, but also a bunch of growth related expenses in the US core business. The um, your lower revenues when you look at um, their bestsellers so far this year, like the first half of the year wasn't great for big books,
Mhm.
but 2025 is a big year. It's just that everything got pushed to Q3 and Q4.
Yeah,
So,
it's happening now.
yeah, Onyx Storm by Rebecca Yarros and Sunrise on the Reaping by Susan Collins and Great
Dan
Big Beautiful
Brown.
Life. Yep, Dan
Yeah,
Brown and John Grisham and Margaret Atwood and like new Michelle Obama. Like everything's coming out in the
yeah.
in the second half of the year. So that's part of it. But another part, and it kind of doesn't get talked about a lot, is um Bertelsmann publishes or posts its earnings in euros. The US dollar, where PRH makes all its money, has been declining. And here again, we can thank Michael Cater for his excellent analysis here. Um, the slide of the US dollar, is just keeps chipping away at the money that PRH makes when it has to
Mm,
report back to its parent company in euros. The other part is that PRH has been shopping for companies lately. And if we think back a few years, there was the great attempt to bring Penguin Random House and Simon and Schuster together to create Penguin and Random and Simon and Schuster House. And and that got blocked by the US government. And it looks like the change in the strategy was okay, us going and buying another big publisher, not you know, not on board anymore.
yep.
Let's go and buy every mid-sized and like kind of small but significant publisher we have. So they have been on a shopping spree. They got a first a minority and then a majority stake in Sourcebooks, who was
Mhm,
one of the largest of the big independents in the US, and they
mhm.
just increased that stake to 75%. They bought Hay House, which is kind of self-help wellness,
Yep. New age a little
sort
bit.
of,
Yep.
new
Yep.
age in 2024. They just bought a personalized gift book publisher, Wonderbly,
Mhm.
in June of this year. They bought the Australian independent publisher, Text Publishing, who's kind of like the iconic Australian independent
Yeah.
at the beginning of this year, and they bought a comics publisher, Boom Studios, in 2024. So they've been just kind of like, if we can't make if we can't get one Simon and Schuster, then we are going to assemble it out of parts.
Yeah.
And I would argue like Sourcebooks a much more interesting strategic purchase in a lot of ways, because they're just an innovation engine for how you do trade publishing differently in the US.
Yep.
Um, But all of that then, has synergy costs and integration costs, and you got to like stitch all of these things together. So I have to imagine that that's sort of sitting in that balance sheet as well. So the it'll what's going to be an interesting test for the PRH CEO is, can I assemble all of these things into something that is more than the sum of its parts and stitch it all together in a way that it does start to become more profitable over time? And in the meantime, was my big bet of pushing all my books to the second half of the year going to pay off? Because when we at Kobo look at the new release list right now, it is like the fourth quarter of 2025 is just stacked
It
with
is too
stuff.
much. Yeah.
It's too much. Like there are easily 50 books that would be like, kind of a top 10 book in any other year.
Yep.
And we're just like we're wading through it. It's great as a bookseller. Like you've got no end of stuff to like there's something for everyone, but it does feel like they pushed everything out the door all at once.
Yeah. Yeah. You're going to have a lot of books hitting 80% of their capacity because because they were playing in an all-star game.
Yeah.
There's no
Yep.
room to score for
No,
themselves. No.
exactly. You're going to have some books that are going to be like not quite in the starting lineup that otherwise absolutely should have been out there.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, what else is going on? We're looking at Books Inc. is selling assets to Barnes and Noble. So Barnes and Noble is also siphoning up smaller pieces to get bigger.
Yeah. I'm fascinated by this because this is a thing that we haven't seen much in North America, like a
Mhm.
big chain buying independents. And it's an echo of a similar strategy that James Daunt, who's the CEO of Barnes and Noble and is also the CEO of Waterstones, it was a similar strategy that he used in Waterstones in the UK, because they bought two of the like other big chains or kind of like iconic smaller chains of the UK. They bought Foyles
Mhm.
in 2018 and Blackwell's in 2022. And in the US, they bought Books Inc., which is kind of like a big local independent chain. And then before that, they bought Tattered Cover, which was one of the like the iconic
One of the
independent bookstores in
beloved stores. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
in and it was sort of the pillar of the literary community in Denver, Colorado. They bought it for, just kind of just under $2 million. And so it's an interesting strategy of picking up, what you'd sort of call semi-distressed book
Mhm.
assets that have a strong brand following and they have lots of community connections. I think at, at least in the case of Tattered Cover, and I'm not sure yet whether it's going to be the case for Books Inc., leaving them in place, like keeping the brand in place in the case of Tattered Cover, um, and I think it says in the release, they're going to do it for Books Inc. as well. They're trading under their own name. They're going to keep their locations, but they're getting plugged into the supply chain, the purchasing, the, employee training and all of the other stuff, I would imagine.
Yeah. Yeah. They're all BNN employees.
And this is kind of something that we get to see in our position as, with sort of global overwatch on the book business. It's something that's happening in other places too. So you have like Thalia, who's the largest bookstore chain in Germany, has been doing this as well, both offering a slate of services to independents that
Mhm.
they can plug into, but also doing some targeted acquisitions in some territories, and then sometimes keeping the brand, sometimes rebadging it as Talia, um, depending on what they've already got in that territory and how much brand equity there is in the store. So the whole question of like how do indies compete in some cases ends with you going, you know what? It's like I'm going to sell it to a larger chain and I'm either going to get I'm going to kind of get my retirement, or this has run into trouble. I can't get the scale to do it on my own for the market that I'm in.
Yeah.
Um, and like you think about Books Inc. is in San Francisco, super expensive market. You've got to like it's hard to make those economics work, and in this case, that gives an opportunity to a chain to come in and go, "Yep, I like everything that you're doing about here. and we're just going to do it with us in the background. It's interesting.
It is. Meanwhile, in the C-suites of a couple of publishing houses, we've got some big changes. Jonathan Karp has stepped down from heading Simon and Schuster, but he's not leaving publishing. This is
He
the way
is,
it goes.
I
He
know.
wanted an easier job. He's like, I love the books. You people are too much trouble.
This to me is the most boss move in, in publishing today. And so Jonathan Karp had a hard job because he had to manage the transition from being a part of Viacom into being acquired by KKR, giant US hedge fund that has been making these very interesting targeted acquisitions of book companies over the last number of years. And um, and so Simon and Schuster was their latest acquisition. You need somebody who can pull the whole company through that process and get them set up on the other side of it. And then he sort of put up his hand and said, "Okay, yeah, I would like to just go and publish books." And the quote that he had um, that he gave was great. It's like, "I came back from the London Book Fair and thought, I don't ever want to go to another book fair again." And listen, we have all been there. Like anybody who's gone to a lot of book fairs has gotten to that point of I never want to go again. But in his case, according to Publisher's Lunch, like he calls up his board chair and says, I'm, love to get back into book publishing. And so now he's going to head up an imprint called Simon Six,
Yep.
which is, very focused and very I think very much kind of bespoke to what he wants to do, and he's out of the big management stuff. So, like, kudos, Jonathan. Like, well done, amazing lateral move, mic drop. All respect to you.
And the six is so great because he had founded under when he was with Hachette, Hachette Book Group's 12 imprint, which was publishing 12 books a year. And that was the idea. It was like it's very focused 12 books a year. And like
Excellent.
clearly that was on his mind. And he was thinking, 12's a lot, man. Like, how do you even take vacation? Six. Let's
And
do
so that's the
six.
that's the deal. He's just doing six. Like that's why it's Simon Six.
Six is
Yes.
six. As far as we know, actually, you know what? I'm reading this and I'm not sure. Nope, no, it is. It is no, it's explicit. For Simon Six, I will acquire and edit half as many books each year and publish them with twice as much emphasis.
So there's six books, but they're going to be as big as 12 books.
They're gonna exactly.
Awesome. I
Yeah,
love it.
we can get AI to illustrate that for anybody having trouble visualizing it. Um, who else is moving? We've got there's another head of firm,
Charlie Redmayne.
Charlie
Charlie
Redmayne,
Redmayne
Harper Collins UK.
Yeah, just resigned from Harper UK and had been there for a long time. And Charlie, a very interesting figure because he was like a person from traditional publishing who went to work for initially for J.K. Rowling to set up Pottermore, which was going to exploit all of the digital IP for Harry Potter, and then came back to HarperCollins very much as, this is the person who's going to modernize and digitize HarperCollins in the UK, and did that for a number of years, and now has suddenly resigned. We don't know why. They haven't said. It's not. We don't even have the, to explore new opportunities or to spend time with family or anything like that. We know that Kate Elton, the very good commercial, managing director for their adult trade, has been named the interim CEO. And she's going to oversee UK and Ireland. But we don't know why. So it's like that one was fast and recent. I'm sure we'll find out more about that in the future. But the CEOs, they're moving around.
They're moving around. You're not moving around. You're
I'm
you're
not
right.
moving around. I'm right here.
You're right where we
I'm
want you.
trapped here in this podcast studio. I can never leave.
I'll tell you how to get out after we're
Okay.
recording. Okay. Lots going on. So, but one more thing, because it's coming up on November and there's a tradition here, NaNoWriMo, but NaNoWriMo isn't NaNoWriMo anymore. Or it might not be. It's a little different. We've talked about this.
Yep.
What the company called NaNoWriMo is no more. There's a new company. What's this new company? What's going on in November?
So first of all, we should explain what NaNoWriMo is. And I think you are I think you are well positioned to be the person to explain
Yeah, well,
NaNoWriMo as a phenomenon.
it's short for National Novel Writing Month. And for years, it was just a tradition of like, it's November, school year's running, the kids have got that sorted, that's happening. It's not yet Christmas. Hey, let's bang out a novel. Let's make it a hobby. Let's make writing a hobby for November. Let's get through these darkening days with a little project that has a light at the end of the tunnel. And that's all it was for years. It was writers banging out as much as they could in the 30 days of November.
And
Um,
there's like a mutual support thing to it, right?
yeah,
Like we're all doing it together. Like you're supposed to write the whole novel
yeah,
in November. That's
yeah.
the idea.
So the last week comes and people start sweating, but it's still like it is collective. There's a just finish the first draft. It doesn't have to be good. Like it was good. It was a good it was a healthy way to practice art together and alone at the same time.
And yeah, it was like a collective challenge built for introverts because at the end of the day, it really is just like you and the book. But you had these trackers and you could post like how many
Yeah.
words you'd written each day, and like we had events at the office where people would get together in a room and they'd kind of do all their writing together. So you had a little bit of that like body doubling that
Yeah.
that people do. Um, and so there was an organization that had been built up around this to organize this. And NaNoWriMo was responsible for a lot of people writing their first books and people that went on to have writing careers also writing their first books. So there was a lot of goodwill built up around NaNoWriMo. And then last year, it all came apart. It
Yeah.
just completely blew up. Um,
And we talked about that on this show.
yeah.
And
And
and we thought we didn't know what was going to happen. We were 12 months out from the next November, and
like
who knows?
November's coming around, and over time we've gotten a better sense of what happened. So it turns out they'd lost money in 4 out of the last 6 years. And originally, like you'd kind of pay a little bit to be or donate a little bit to be a part of NaNoWriMo, but as their expenses expanded, they were relying more on things like sponsorships. And then if those sponsorships didn't come through, they would lose money. So they were kind of spending through their savings. And then there was a mishandling of a child safety complaint because, and I guess for the state that they operate in, if you have volunteers that are interacting in any way with children, and there were people who were doing NaNoWriMo that were under the age of 18, so they follow within that. If you're a volunteer, you're supposed to complete state mandated child safety training, and you're supposed to submit applications that verify personal information, and they didn't do any of that.
Oh my
And
God.
so then you're in trouble with state regulators. And then it seemed like the thing that just kind of stuck the fork in it was, and unfortunate to say, another giant AI blow up, which we talked about last time, which
Yeah.
was this whole fight over whether could you use AI to build to do your book during NaNoWriMo. So that led to its death, but like a phoenix, it's coming back, but it had to come back with a new name. So now it's called Novel November 2025. And a couple of writing companies, one called Pro Writing Aid that produces like writers' tools, and Scrivener, which is a beloved, yet to me arcane uh, writing tool that like lots of authors love to use for outlining
Like
and
screenplays
writing.
and novels and
Oh yeah,
apparently it's
yeah.
like the tool. Yeah.
It is the tool. Huge, huge following. So they're supporting it, and Kickstarter's in there as well. And then they're relaunching the event. So they've lined up a whole slate of authors who are going to come and like help sort of coach and mentor, and it'll be back. So very happy that it's back because it just seemed to be such a great way for people who were like novel writing curious to jump into that. And so goodbye, NaNoWriMo. Hello, Novel November. We're happy to have you.
Yeah. I guess a little bit of a lesson too around if you're going to take a thing that people are just like doing, if you're going to take like if you want to become like Halloween Inc., you know, you,
Yes.
there are steps, and some of those steps are near and dear to some important people who can make life very hard for you, like regulators. So
Yep.
if you're gonna do the thing, you got to do the thing all the way.
Yeah. And what was interesting to me was I hadn't realized how many volunteers they had.
Mm,
Um, And so they had hundreds and hundreds of people who were volunteers for NaNoWriMo. And so that I it sounds like the organization itself was really small, but it was managing this big pool of um, volunteers, and so both costs rising, management stuff getting a little bit out of control,
Yeah,
and when you're running on a super skinny budget, that's it's really easy to come apart. So we're uh, we're hoping that Novel November will live long and prosper, and we can't wait for the influx of books into Kobo Writing Life that come after
absolutely.
every November when people have done their first one and they want to sell it,
We
because
should brand it Deluge No December is
that's right.
maybe just one more edit January or
Exactly. Yeah. Take a little time. Take a little
take
time
take
and
your time.
polish that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
It's
exactly.
okay. We'll be
Yeah,
here for you.
exactly. It's gonna have your name on it for a long time, and it could end up getting sucked into AI, and you're gonna have to have a fight over it. So
No,
you should
no, it
care
will
about
not.
it.
Not in our, not in our safe and
Oh,
competent
not on
hands.
ours. Oh, hell
No,
no, no.
no,
But
somewhere out there.
we love people going wide, and it's a scary world out there.
It's jungle out there.
Thank you, Michael.
Can't wait to do it next time.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We'll do it again sooner than I think the 6-ish months it's been since the last one. We'll definitely not go
Yeah.
6 months again.
Okay.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you.